Do you think that there is a relationship between Gamergate of yesterday, of 10 years ago, and the current sort of state of our culture today?
That's a difficult question to answer, and I don't know.
I know I will respond to this handsome gentleman's comment. Yes, obviously. Like the whole thing started because of journalists attacking their customers, essentially attacking the market, attacking the people who give them money, because those customers didn't like them cramming their political views into everything. And that is still happening today, if you haven't noticed, in every facet of our culture. Every facet. But continue. Try to answer this question. You know what I think is going on here? I've noticed this. Is that before Gamergate, obviously this has been going on, but let's say from since Gamergate to the current culture war, which is something that's probably been going on for a very long time, and we are just now starting to really, really notice it. There have been people who would have considered themselves politically inactive when this was going on. Like they weren't really thinking about politics. They were just trying to enjoy their hobbies. They were just living their life, enjoying their bread and circuses as consumers. And it was fine. And then all this started happening and they started noticing patterns because that's where this starts. It's pattern recognition. That's where it begins. People start seeing things that they didn't see before. They notice changes, and sometimes they're subtle and they let it pass, and sometimes they don't let it pass, or they really take notice, or sometimes they'll take something that they've loved for a long time and they change it drastically, or they undermine it, or they subvert it, and people say, why is this happening? What is going on here? This is wrong. I'm not a fan of this. And then when they speak up about it, they get called names. They get criticized. They're told, well, you know what? You're the thing that you liked. It's ours now. We're gonna change it. And so that's how this happened. And what I think happened also is that some people who considered themselves more on the left, um, they they rebelled against it to a degree, but then they didn't want to see that there was a downstream sort of political consequence of it, because it was a culture that was being manufactured artificially in order to shape our political opinions. And ultimately, that's where it was going to land. And there are people who don't want that to be true because they want to do everything in their power to avoid the political, and they can't. Because you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. And for the people who did get activated and they did realize that this was something they're going to have to deal with, and they do want to live in a society where people are free to create what they want, and people who have always loved the things that they loved will still be able to love those things because they will still be representative of what they like and not some artificial simulacrum, of something like a skin suit that is there to essentially push a message, because that is what entertainment has become. That is what our culture is becoming. It is a pale copy of itself, and that has consequences. Culture is really important. It cannot be downplayed. And I will talk about this more with regards to how this happened. There's an art history video I'm going to be talking about that goes back to the Renaissance and the French Revolution, and shows how we got here through there, at least what I think going on. So anyway, let's hear some more.
Um, my first book was titled "GamerGate: First Battle of the Culture War," and at the
Right.
time I believed that. I still think that there might be something to the culture war framing, but I mean the fact is, like, we live in a society where a large number of people have different competing viewpoints and interests, and people are always going to have like different ideas about what exactly the culture, quote unquote, should be, and what types of things that they want to see in that culture. Uh, Conservatives, libertarians, woke people, they these people like maybe not the wokeness always it's an ideology hasn't always existed necessarily, but
It's very well,
the
at least
channel,
as it exists now, it's very recent.
yeah, as it
Yeah, I think wokeness is not new. It's definitely evolved, like how like a Pokemon. Like it just you know became a really I don't know Pokemon very well, but it was like a very powerful Pokemon overnight. But it's the same. The ideology is like 100 years old. Like there's literally nothing conservative about like the ideology of woke. It's a really old set of ideas, and it's not really about the thing. Like I've said this as well. The thing that they're rebelling against, the thing that they're changing, the causes they claim to care about, they don't. It's not about any of that. It's not about making video games inclusive. It's not about making films inclusive. It's not about any of those things. It's about the revolution all the time. And it's constant and it's never ending. And it's about getting to the end of history. You know, it's about the dialectic, however you want to put it. And I don't think Tachyon Blue, with all due respect, I like that you're making this book, and I hope that you figure this out. But there, this is what we are embedded in is a cultural revolution. This isn't even really a cultural war, because a cultural war presumes that there are two sides, and a cultural revolution is one side is pushing for serious change and really fast, and the other side is just resisting. They're not even pushing back really. Like, we talked about right wing people, whatever the fuck right wing means. I've done a video on that. I think that the political spectrum, the compass is bullshit. I've already explained it. It's basically just leftists versus everybody else. There are leftists and there are non-leftists, and that's it. Okay. And because the non-left is so like let's say diverse in their viewpoints, some of them are classical liberal, some of them are conservative, some of them are Christians, some of the Christian conservative types, some of them could be Christian libertarians, some of them are ANCAPs, but they're all non-left. That's ultimately what it is. There's just the left and the non-left. And the left is it's not it seems like it has a lot of powerful voices. There's very much a lot of elitism, a lot of very powerful people that want to engineer society, but most of it is fueled by pretty weak-willed people who are programmed. They're basically NPCs that are just following their programming, and they think that what they're doing is, fighting against some evil tyrannical force. And the reason for that, by the way, is because leftism created the political compass. Like, I've talked about this before, and I saw recently on the Lotus Eaters, they made a video about the political compass, and they were like, yeah, I think it's kind of bullshit because everybody who takes it comes out center left. Oh yeah? No shit. Right? Like, it's obviously bullshit because you can't measure someone's political views in the way that the compass quizzes you, because it quizzes you under the presumption that the more bigoted your views are, the more right wing you are. That doesn't make sense because the left is like extremely prejudiced as well, but they're prejudiced in the right direction. So it's okay when they do it, right? So this doesn't make sense. Sorry, I know that there are lefties that are going to see this, they're going to get pissed off because they feel like they're the good guys, but that's not how this works. People are complex. So anyway, let us continue.
it exists now, yes, but the idea of there's going to be some sort of conflict in society between like different groups who have different cultural values. That's probably always going to happen in a free society. Um, Now, as for how GamerGate like specifically relates to it, like GamerGate was, I guess, the first group of people you could say that was like that stood up to these people and was victimized by them on a large scale. And so, because of that, GamerGate probably did influence the culture war, especially in the beginning, to a pretty like moderately sized extent. Where if you were on the side of like freedom of speech, if you were on the side of neutral institutions, and hearing out like a plurality of viewpoints, then you were probably going to be on the pro GG side, or at least like neutral but relatively sympathetic to it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you didn't hold those views, there's like a pretty fair chance that you're going to end up on like the anti-GamerGate side, and you're going to like try to demonize or dismiss these people as being, oh, they're just misogynists who hate women and want to drive them out of gaming, and they're probably harassers too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as time has gone on, the culture war, I mean, it's been a decade. Most people, I guess, don't really care about the specific GamerGate stuff anymore because it's time moves in one direction. And I think that the values of GamerGate, which probably did influence the early culture war to some extent, probably don't play much of a role today in the culture war. Like if you look at the right today, the culture war is basically, in many ways, it's basically just taken partisan lines, and large numbers of people who don't even know what GamerGate is are engaged in the conversation, and a lot of them on both sides don't really care about GamerGate values, quote unquote, like freedom of speech. They just want speech for their own side.
Do you think the right does that?
Yeah,
Can you give me an example?
yeah. The moral panic, I guess you could say, over books and libraries.
You
Like
mean
my
like the books that the you mean the books that are being read at schools that talk about anal sex and blowjobs and stuff that they don't want
there
kids
are
being taught?
there are a couple of books like that, yeah, and I'm not a fan of that. But there's also hundreds of books that are being removed from school libraries, and not just school libraries, but public libraries too, actually. And the person who's running for Secretary of State in Missouri, I don't know if they'll win the primary or not. We'll see. But for the Republican side, they literally took library books from the library and then took a flamethrower and lit them on fire and said that they're going to burn these woke books from the public library, not even a school library, but from a public library. So it doesn't seem like I would trust the right to be especially pro free speech. They also,
I just gotta say, I saw the ad. It was a campaign ad, and I looked briefly at the books, and they were books on queer theory. I think that there are people, and I don't think it's limited to the right, because that would presume that, like, all the Democrats are all for queering the children. I don't think that's true. I think that there's a small number of people who are very twisted and interested in engineering kids to be gay and trans, and you could look it up. There's plenty of data on it that shows that they are in fact doing this, and what they're trying to do is stop that from happening. I mean, like, if a kid is gay, then let's just let them live a normal life. Let's not intercede. Let's not try to engineer them. Let's not try to coerce them or encourage them in any particular direction, and just see how they turn out. If they turn out to be gay, then great. But this stuff it's engineering. Now, I'm not necessarily for burning books. I think it was more of a performative thing that she was doing. I don't think that she was literally going to burn them. But I have heard pretty good arguments that putting these books in public libraries, um, as well as schools, and I think schools are the largest concern that people have, it's just not the same as somebody saying, changing, like, changing the face of video games, like because they want to suit their feminist agenda. In fact, there's probably it's probably a lot more, because the thing is if you grew up on, like, the Arkham games, you're probably a grown ass adult. And so when Sweet Baby is involved in the production of your game that you pay your hard-earned money for as a grown ass adult, then yeah, you should be able to be like, look, I don't want this crap in my game. But this is not an adult thing. This is children we're talking about. This is the reason why this is going on. Now, I get, as a principle, free speech is preferable, but first of all, I don't think she's going to win on that basis. So that it's almost like saying it's the same is a bit of a misleading thing, because that presumes that there's a tremendous amount of support. Just because someone comes forward and makes a claim about something, it doesn't mean anything. Like, Anita Sarkeesian can say this thing is sexist or whatever, and as long as she doesn't get a lot of support, then we can just refute the arguments and move on. But the point is, she is getting a lot of support. She literally works in the industry. She is literally doing, the work of changing the face of our entire industry. And it's not only her; she is just a symptom of a broader ideology, which is what GamerGate should have been and is still about to this day. It's not about the ethics, because the ethics is downstream from the ideology. The ideology creates a subjective postmodern view of morality, of right and wrong, and this moral view allows for ethics to be twisted, contorted, or even just outright dismissed, because it is pursuing a greater good. And that's why the journalists are unethical, because they don't think it's wrong. Like if you and they still don't believe it's wrong. You confront them right now, and you show them everything that they're doing wrong, they will deny it, not because they're dishonest, but because they're true believers. They truly believe that all things are permissible, provided that it arrives at the appropriate endpoint. And this is the thing with lefties involved, that were involved with Gamergate and are involved with the culture war. I'll give you some examples. Just some guy who I've had on the show before over on Honey Badger Radio, and I overall like him. When he was totally fine with, everything that was like being involved in his side of the culture war, criticizing Rings of Power, criticizing all these like woke movies and the MCU, etc. And then, something with the gays came up, and because he himself is gay, he immediately flipped, because now he had to like work out this cognitive dissonance of, is it okay when when wokies that share my identity are becoming a problem? And of course it's not, because now he feels personally attacked. I think the whole collectivist thing is feminine. Like the whole thing. Like I've never, ever once in my life said, as a Puerto Rican, I don't even see that. I don't understand it. Maybe it's because I had my father in my life, and he, taught me about, without necessarily overtly doing so, but he basically said, you are an individual, you make your own choices, you are responsible for you. That is a masculine way of seeing the world. That is what I believe. And whenever somebody goes, uh-oh, my black people, uh-oh, my gays, uh-oh, my transes, and they feel like they're a part of that, you're behaving in a feminine collectivist way. And that's what leftism is. It is statism, it is collectivism. It is measured by the amount of hardship that you, imagined or real, have to endure, and not necessarily your ability to overcome and become individualized, right? And I'm not for atomization, before anybody says anything. That's not the same as being. But anyway, let's listen to some.
Of course, the right today, I think it's probably worth pointing out, did try to stay in power after losing the last election.
That didn't work out though, right? And do you think that the Republican Party is the right?
In the United States context, I mean, I wouldn't say that they're they encompass the entirety of the right, but I think that they are the political faction, the political party that broadly represents the right in the United States of America.
Okay. I don't want to get in, because that's sort of like a different topic, but I would suggest that most people that I know that are on the right despise the Republican Party. And it's because they act similar to the Democrat Party. And this is why I asked, because when I hear about like this, so and so Republican from this state did this thing, I don't think that right wingers, people that I know to be right wingers, agree with any of that stuff. When it comes to the books, the only thing I will say is that I think that they are more concerned about, and I'd have to see what the books are, like the ones that are not sexualizing children and teaching, like there's like woke kindergarten now, and putting queer theory and critical race theory into teaching material, I think is a serious issue because you're raising a generation of activists that can't add, subtract, or divide, and you can see that by the test scores. And I think that that's a serious problem that needs to be addressed. Now, I don't know that it should be done at the legislative level because I find that that's not productive, but people should be aware of it. And I think that there are definitely some cases where, in particular, books that are inappropriate for children should not be in schools. In libraries, sure. In bookstores, sure. Whatever. I'm not against that. I'm a free speech absolute. There is some cause for concern when it comes to that. And I want to add though that I grew up in Chicago. For a decent chunk of my adult life, I lived in the Wrigleyville area, and I was working at a paint store. I want to say it was my like late 20s, early 30s, and it was the area I was very close to. There was this other neighborhood that was right next to where I lived called Boys Town, and it was basically a gay neighborhood, and there was like rainbows everywhere and all that. And whenever the Pride Parade would come, it would be in Boys Town. It was called Boys Town because there were a lot of men there, but there were also lesbians there and drag queens and whatnot. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because books that were about queerness and homosexuality and transgenderism and all of those things, there were magazines and books, and you could only find them in special sections of bookstores in that neighborhood, or if you were to go into a club, because there were clubs there, obviously. You might find like some magazines and like these kind of free newspapers that were specifically aimed at the gay population, like out and so like I didn't have a problem with those existing. See, I think this is where I don't know that he understands where I'm coming from. The existence of those things doesn't bother me at all. That's why I say I am a free speech absolutist. I don't want to eliminate them, but I think that there's a difference between having a section, even if it's at a Barnes and Noble or a library, that has all of the queer stuff in it, because the queer stuff is not just like romance. Let's be real. Like, it's sex. It's very sexual, and it would be like having like, I don't know, like nudie magazines in or books of that depict sex, like the Kama Sutra or something, in like, the general section or in the children's section. And I don't think it should be there. So I'm okay with the books existing, but I don't think children should have access. And I think that they should be kind of like, quarantined, I guess, or sectioned off, where people can still go there. Like when I was a kid, if you go to the video store, the adult section was in a special room in the back, like behind a curtain, that you had to be 18 to go in there and look at that stuff. And we don't live in that world because of the internet, but there should be something like it in existence, right? We should still have like a sense that this is not for general audiences. Like, this is a very specific thing, and that's the thing about books about homosexuality and queerness, is that nobody wants to acknowledge the fact that it is not just like romantic interest, like boy meets girl type stuff. It's sexual. It's sexual because that's the only manner of expression that I guess that people want to depict in this kind of material. This is why I said, it features like anal sex, oral sex, all kinds of masturbation, things like this, which you don't even get in heterosexual books about boys and girls. So this isn't like, this isn't me like, oh, hating on the gays. I'm just pointing out like the reality. This is not appropriate for kids. And that, I think, makes it very different from video games like that are being undermined by woke activists. Anyway, moving on. And I still don't see that that is anywhere near what the left does. Because I think that there's this thing that people do because they want to appear to be the most reasonable. They try to find ways to like balance out the blame so that they look like they're in the middle. And the truth is that there is no center. The left runs most of our institutions. They're in our media, they're in our films, they're in our video games, they're in every hobby, they're in every bit of entertainment, and they are using that to bludgeon everyone into submission. And this comes from the fact that they were taught the way this way of life or this perspective in colleges and universities. So they're the universities and the education system is creating activists and putting them into the workforce, and those people are influencing everything. It is what's happening. This is not even debatable. This is not a matter of opinion. This is a fact. And the only even the people in politics that have an R next to their name have the same authoritarian streak that runs through them. And so it doesn't really matter. This is why I said the parties are irrelevant. It comes down to your principles and your values. And I think that this is the reason why a lot of people that would be considered on the right are generally they don't like the party that's supposed to represent them. And this is also true in other countries. In Canada, the Conservative Party is not like a right-wing party. It is basically like still a kind of center-left party. In the UK, the Tory party is despised, again, by normal British people that just want simple things like closed borders and low taxes and, things like this. This is the until the day comes that like the Daily Wire is like a game studio that's producing games that force people to like, I don't know, kill the gays or something, or convert like trans people or whatever. I'm not going to consider these things two sides. Like it's just not. There's clearly one side that has a tremendous amount of power and everyone else is just kind of like trying to lay low. And I don't think it's working out. This is why I think the culture war it's not even a war really, because, and I'll let you talk. I'm sorry for just going off here, but it's not even a war really. It's just one-sided. I mean, what do we have here that's like let's look at Hollywood, for example. Now, of course, some of these studios are losing money, but you got like every studio is pushing out like all kinds of progressive stuff. And they're generally, when it comes to franchises, they've really only taken the franchises that were generally populated, funded, supported, and grown by men. Men who spend money on Marvel movies, on Star Wars stuff, on Star Trek stuff, on Lord of the Rings. I mean, like whatever. And I'm not saying women don't get into that, but it's not even close. Like the amount of effort and energy and support and enthusiasm from men that goes into these things, and James Bond, and like I can go on, right? And it's all getting like subverted and torn up from the inside out. And men, even though these like the last Marvels movie, the Marvels, it was like a record flop, like only made like 40 something million, and still the majority of people that went to watch it were men. So it's specifically targeting that's and it's coming from like overwhelmingly from one side. Now, on the other hand, you got like some studios that are producing, I don't even know if I would call it right-wing content. Just like right-wing content today just means a movie that stars a white guy, like Mission Impossible, right? Or like Top Gun. Is that right-wing? I don't think it is. I think it's just normal. But of course, because it's so skewed, the people in the business, the people that do the reviews, the people that like look at this stuff and talk about this stuff will say, "OMG, look at how what is it, male, pale, and stale this is," and they will treat it like it's a right-wing thing, and it's like, yes, this is exactly how Gamergate was framed in the media as well, right? It was a right-wing, white, cisgendered, heteronormative construct, and I think Tachyon Blue is falling for this. He's falling for this. Like when, and I say it with respect, like you're falling for this this trick of, you know, either it's woke or it's right wing. Like there are two sides. And like I already said, there are not two sides. There's normal people and then there's the left. And the left are running everything. And by the way, I just want to say one other thing. I'll do two parts. So I'm going to end this in a second because I do want to respond to more of this. The other thing I need to say about this is that it's not just our entertainment, because the title of the video I'm responding to is a clip from a fireside chat I did with Tachyon Blue, and Tachyon Blue took a clip of it and uploaded it and said, "The greater threat, Trump or woke entertainment? Honey Badger interview takes an interesting turn." And because I guess he thought I was gonna be like, "Oh yeah, you know, Trump is a much more dangerous threat than woke entertainment." But I think that's a misrepresentation, firstly, of the Trump thing, which I won't get into in this video. I'll go into it more in the next one. But I'll just talk about the woke entertainment part. It's not just entertainment. This is what I'm saying. Like DEI, and James Lindsay has done a bunch of videos on this, and lots of other people have talked about this. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, backed by massive corporations, which I thought the left did not like BlackRock and Vanguard. They're the ones pushing this stuff. And it's inspired by, you know, like the Chinese social credit score, which is still a holdover from Maoist China, which is a communist country, right? This stuff is not just in our entertainment. That's just where we're seeing it the most. It's like this stuff is in our schools. It's in our kindergarten. It's in our grade schools. It's in our high schools. It's in our colleges and our universities. It's in the boardrooms. It's in all companies big and small. It's in every industry. It's in our manufacturing. It's in our military. It's in our politics. It's in our Oval Office. It's in our news media. It's in our it's everywhere. Like it's so ubiquitous that, and this is exactly what I think needs to be pointed out, it's been, for the most part, normalized. It's been normalized to the point where if you point it out, it's like trying to convince a fish that he's swimming in water. And you have to basically like make it clear that this is not an organic thing. It is not organic. So anyway, I'm going to stop it here because I think it gets a bit more interesting later on, but I have some other things I got to do. So let me know what you guys think about this. I'm going to respond to the rest of it. I'm going to get into Trump because he seems to think that Trump was supposed to call the National Guard and did not. But the truth is that the Senate or the Congress could have done that, and they chose not to. And this was to their benefit. This is why I said that didn't work out, because they saw an opportunity. And of course, there's all this evidence that the whole thing was a gigantic op. Anyway, there's plenty of evidence for this. But again, I think Tachyon Blue's in a bubble. I think a lot of people are in a bubble. And it's really ironic because GamerGate should have woken you up to this. It should have woken you up to the fact that the ethical problem is not limited to games journalism. The ethical problem is everywhere. It's everywhere. And people who are paying attention will know. So anyway, thanks guys for coming on the show or watching this. I'll see you guys later on. And yeah, have a good one. Long live Vivian James.